What's going on, everybody? Brett here, back playing some more Total War Warhammer 2 on the multiplayer community. Today we're going to be doing something special. It's a Regiment of Renown and Hero only set of battles. We did 3 of these. My buddy Triiari and I, he was nice enough to help me get these 2v2s going. And big thanks to our opponents here. I'll go over their names in the at the end of the battle, but they were very kind and we had some pretty fun matches. So as you can see, let's put it in slow-mo before the battle gets started. We're playing on a pretty fun map. I think this is a quest battle map for Karl Franz in the campaign. We're going to be playing, I am specifically going to be the Forces of Chaos. And Triiari, my buddy, is going to be playing as Bretonnia. As I mentioned, Regiments of Renown and Heroes only. We try not to spam the hero part too much. The more interesting part is definitely getting to see these Regiment of Renown units get used that you don't normally get to see. For instance here, these Wardens of Montfort, these mounted yeoman archers with their special poison abilities and their decent melee stats, they are going to be able to greatly injure these dire pack here, these anti-large dire wolves for the vampire accounts. And with a little help from my Soul of Damnation Hell Cannon, we should be able to put these very dangerous vampire counts units in their place. You also get to see the Chillgeist, the Hex Wraith units. You don't get to see these dudes very often. They of course have physical resistance as an ethereal unit. They cause terror. They have Vanguard deployment. And they also have the Chilling Aura, which slows enemies in a 40-meter radius around them by 36%, which is huge. At this point, I think I realized that we were kind of blocking my cannon. Kolek, look at his big butt just sitting in front of the cannon. I was like, oh, Lord, let me get him out of the way. I'm going to do that in a second. And I think also some of the Beast Slayers, sometimes you either obstruct the crew or you obstruct the cannon itself. And I think at this point I was the one obstructing it. So kind of ridiculous there. The Green Knight for Triiari out here, Vanguard deployed, is hidden technically in the trees, though it's kind of hard to see the trees. The Green Knight does regen whenever he fights inside of the forest. But with this kind of aerial squad here from the vampire counts, a vampire lore of shadows, a vampire lore of death, and a blood dragon vampire lord. So lots of magic, lots of gold being spent on all of these different items. Possibly could have cut a ton of that and got even more units. But this is a pretty dangerous squad headed straight for the Green Knight. So Triiari is going to be smart. He's going to pull back with the Green Knight to safety. And we have a nice little defensive position here at the bottom of this hill. And having the Soul of Damnation as the only Regiment of Renown here artillery piece is going to be pretty nice. It's going to give us the range advantage when eventually I finally move Kolek out of the way. We'll be able to take some shots at the Chillgeist, which take extra damage from the Soul of Damnation because it does do magic damage, which of course bypass their physical resistance. So playing as Bretonnia, of course you're going to see all of the great Cav units, the Companions of Quilneas. Triiari and I both agree that these are pretty much our favorite Cav units. They look awesome. They're super powerful. Flame resistance for no reason, but they also have immune to psychology and the Blessings of the Lady giving them plus 20% physical resistance. They are a super powerhouse unit, very good at dealing with infantry. We also see the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, the Knight Errants. They have Frenzy as well as immune to psychology. Wardens, we've gone over them. And we also have the Knights of the Lionhearted. They deal magic damage. They have an encouragement aura as well as causing fear and just having super juice stats. Going to be great versus large targets. And finally, the first shot of the Soul of Damnation going off here. 541 missile damage is not bad. It also has a few abilities we can go over. And as all Hell Cannons are, it is unbreakable. But it also has Soul Devourer. So as long as it's active if an enemy presence is in ability range. So it gets increased reload skill. I also had Boom popped earlier, thinking I was going to be able to shoot at these Chillgeists and do increased damage to them, but that was sadly not the case. See a Spirit Leech going off on the Green Knight, that's very strong. The Green Knight, just as the Chillgeists are ethereal, so too is he. His physical resistance is easily bypassed by spells like Spirit Leech. And just tons of Spirit Leeches over the course of a long game can certainly take him out. I think at this point I was telling Triiari just to put him in the forest to get that regen going, which would completely counteract that Spirit Leech. So a nice little squad here. From Triiari has the Fey Enchantress with some of the heals as well as the Thorns Shield of Thorns. And let's see, we also brought the Comet of Casadora, which is great. If we can just get over here, it's called the Chalice of Potions, but it's basically a bound spell that allows her to drop down an AoE comet from the sky, deals tons of damage, and the Favor of the Fae, which increases melee attack by 44, which for those of you who don't know is quite a huge amount. She's resistant to missiles, 60% resistance to magic whenever she's on her Unicorn Silverall, as well as a 38% physical resistance thanks to the Blessing of the Lady and the Guardian passive that the Paladins do give. Now, the Paladins have received changes recently, making them more anti-large specialists as opposed to anti-infantry, and I think that was a pretty smart change on the part of CA. The Paladins are much more useful as anti-large kind of duelist one-on-one heroes. They're very similar to Nobles now in the way that they function, but they also have the option of having that Guardian passive, which is very nice. And Triiari also took the abilities that you could pop on them. One of them is called Deadly Onslaught, I know off the top of my head. That's charge bonus, armor piercing damage, weapon strength, and the other is Foe Seeker. So that makes them a bit more expensive, but it also makes them much more deadly in combat versus other opposing enemy lords. And I have a nice little front line here of the Mirror Guard, Chaos Warriors. They're basically just jacked Chaos Warriors. They're immune to psychology. That's really all it is. But they have great stats. Next to the Demon Spew, in the center here, these Nurgle cursed Forsaken units. They have poison damage, and they also have the Swarm of Flies, so -5 melee attack to units and an AoE around them. So they're nice to have in the center of your formation. And I also have the Weird Spawn here, who sunder armor and have great physical resistance of 15% kind of tacked on to them. So they're a pretty tough unit. I prefer armor sundering over poison any day. So that's a pretty good addition to them. And because we have the artillery advantage, we don't really need to move from this hill position. It's our opponents that need to move. We have a pretty nice mobile force here between Kolek, Sun Eater, completely stripped down. I don't have any of his abilities whatsoever. That made him cheap enough for me to afford to get a Sword of Chaos. These dudes are incredible looking. They also give me that Guardian Aura, 18% physical resistance to Kolek, as well as giving us the Apocalyptic Charge. So it only has a 70-meter range, but it is map-wide effect range. It's kind of a difficult ability to read, but basically if you charge next to them, you'll get an insane charge bonus. And we also want to use that in conjunction with the Summoners of Rage, the yellow. It always kind of weird to me that they're this like weird bright yellow. They look like the bad guy from Sin City. But anyway, they have a bound spell, which is extremely powerful. It's Chain Lightning, and it recharges, I think, as long as they're engaged in melee. So it's on a 60-second cooldown. But these are some pretty powerful melee fighters if we need them. And they do great anti-large work. And against the Tomb King's player, which we'll get to in just a second, that's going to be exactly what we need. I also have a Chaos Sorcerer, the Lore of Death. I think I just have Fate Abuna, and I'm only going to get 1 or 2 casts of that this game. It's an extremely expensive spell, but I want it to have some magic, and cutting down on Kolek and other things is what allowed me to ultimately afford that spell. And I also have an Exalted Hero completely stripped down, but he is on a horse to give us that mobility, and he's going to, when sitting next to the Swords of Chaos, he also gets that physical resistance bonus. So he's going to make a nice little focal point of leadership for our army should anything happen to Kolek or to the sorcerer. Having three forms of leadership is pretty strong. And then Triiari also has the Holy Wardens of La Maison Tall, fire and magic damage, frenzy as well, very powerful unit, especially versus the Tomb Kings and the vampire accounts. And then the Beast Slayers of Bastion, excellent anti-large units, great armor piercing, and just all around great stats. They're nearly unbreakable as Regiments of Renown. And it's at this point that the Vampire Counts player tried to go in pretty hard on the Green Knight, and Triiari acted very quickly to counter-engage. The Blood Dragon Vampire procced a lot of his abilities. Invocation of the Heck to try and keep him alive, but Heart Piercing was also used to try and do increased damage. Using these zombies summons to try and block up the charges of the cavalry worked very well. It's going to allow him to escape. And you'll see here these 2 vampires didn't even want to really get into the fight. I'm going to be trying to aid him where I can, but for the most part I feel like since we have such a powerful range advantage in the form of the Soul of Damnation, it's really the impetus of our opponents here to come to us and engage. Basically, by skirmishing forward with the Wardens of Montfort, all we've really done is give the Chosen of the Gods here, these ridiculous Ushabti units, great targets to shoot at. So these dudes are anti-infantry, but I mean their missiles are so heavily armor-piercing that it really doesn't matter what they shoot at. If they hit you, you're going to die. Yeah, their weapons sunder shields and pretty much ignore armor completely. And let's see, for the Tomb King player, Cetra the Imperishable on foot. I like this a lot. I probably would have cut almost all of these abilities. He took almost every single ability on Cetra. If he was able to cut this, probably could have afforded, you know, something else. Maybe even another Tomb Prince on foot. But Cetra's a great caster. He's a great anti-large duelist. And yeah, just even lightly supported with the Guardian Aura from a Tomb Prince will make him very tanky in combat. So I've just been kind of shooting at whatever I can reach. At the moment, I can reach the King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion. And a bit of a whiff there from the Soul of Damnation. Not the most accurate of things. But King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion, silver shields, poison damage, a very sturdy unit. We also have here, this little castle's messing us up. We also have the Eyes of the Desert, the Sepulchral Stalkers. They spit poison. They do poison damage on those missiles, but they're great anti-large armor-piercing units. And if you put them on a target and also shoot at that target with the Blessed Legion of Focht, the Skeleton Archers, with their armor sundering, you will nuke any target you hit. Especially, you could also focus with the Chosen of the Gods, and the big boy here, the Sphinx of Uksef, probably the scariest thing on the battlefield after Kolek. Flaming and magical damage on an anti-large armor-piercing unit. It's going to be pretty strong. A Necrotech would have been a good investment here. Cut all of those abilities on Cetra, except for maybe one or two spells, or one ability, one spell, something like that. And all of a sudden you can afford a cheap Necrotech hero unit. And the Kepler Guard here, very similar to the Sternsmen. They both have regen. They're both great anti-infantry units. And decent armor here on the Sternsmen. Very poor armor here on the Kepler Guard. But their regen usually keeps them pretty healthy. And the Feasters in the Dusk here, forward deployed, they have Vanguard deployment. So probably could have put them out in the forest somewhere and hidden them, hoping to get some kind of pick later in the game. The Claws and the Gash here, sitting in the center, going to be healing in an AoE and draining health. But if we can keep that from ever getting into the battle, then that would be ideal. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's everything. It was kind of a long-winded introduction, but I hope you appreciate that for all of you players who may not know what some of those units are. So I'm trying to be very conscientious about keeping my Soul of Damnation online. The zombie summons here are threatening to take it out, and because there's no units nearby, I can just pull my entire front line in to deal with the zombie summons. Triari's Fey Enchantress, Green Knight, they're not really great targets for these Vampire Goon Squad. To be honest, the one I need to be the most worried about is Kolek, surprisingly. He's such a huge target, and even with all of this kind of squad I'm rolling him with, he's still somewhat vulnerable. So our infantry and all of this kind of weird back and forth that we're doing is getting left behind. But as long as our opponents up here don't move, we really don't need to move at all. The Wardens of Montfort still online, still taking shots. Would probably be, it's nice that he's slowing them with the poison, so they're going to be much less able to, you know, dive down and take fights easily and then escape. So a nice little feint there from the Vampire Counts player. The Sphinx of Uksef coming in. Fighting in the woods, not the best for him. The Tomb Prince is being melted pretty hard by these Paladins. They're being debuffed by, what's that called? The Blade of Steep, or Step. But I'm coming in with my Exalted Hero and my Swords of Chaos to try and pin him, as well as with Kolek and the Summoners of Rage. So this, I was a little shocked here. So Triiari engaged really aggressively and then pulled back right as I was engaging and kind of left me to take this fight by myself. He has lots of cavalry here, but he's got it all tied up, you know, fighting zombies and, you know, these chill guys. I really needed his help in this fight right here, and I felt a little bit unsupported. So if he could have perhaps pulled out the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, even one of these units would have been great. But they're all charging into this blob here, including his hero units. And Kolek is going to be pulled back because he was being focused heavily by the Sphinx of Uksef, as well as the Blessed Legion. And for Kolek, that's pretty bad. At this point, I was kind of like circling, like, hey man, Triiari and I were in Discord, so I was like, man, help Kolek, save him. And his units were just kind of chilling. Summoners of Rage, I tried to pull them back to come and help. The Sorcerer Lord of Death is being pulled forward to get us a, you know, a nice Fate of Buna, but it's too late. Kolek, with decent health, is being run off the battlefield a little too late. Triiari noticed and was able to give me a regrowth, which is going to give him good HP, but as long as he chases him off the battlefield, it won't matter. In the end, it'll just have been kind of a wasted regrowth, and there's really nothing he can do to catch us, because the vampires are just a little bit too fast on those flying units. So a bit of my fault for leaving him out in kind of this open area, but being unsupported like that felt pretty bad. The Summoners of Rage are going to get a nice chain lightning off from the King of Kesha's Scorpion Legion, and that's going to absolutely crush them. There aren't many of them left, and they're trying to duel down the Sphinx of Utsef, which is a fight you don't get to see every day. And the Sphinx of Utsef in a one-on-one, I think, wins this fight. So it's hard to know because the Summoners of Rage took a lot of damage before this fight even started. The Swords of Chaos were also tanking quite a bit. It's at this point I realized that, you know, Triiari's got all of his cavalry over here. It's a little awkward for me. And if I don't want to lose all of my units in this engagement, I need to bring forward my infantry, and I need to support myself, and then hope that Triiari will be able to pull his units in and kind of help me sustain in this fight. And I guess one of the good things is I'm taking all of the damage, and in the meantime, his knights are staying fresh. So Kolek's off the battlefield, the Vampire Count's hero squad is moving back in. Sucks to lose Kolek with that much HP, but our infantry corps is very strong. Our artillery is still online. The weird spawn are basically just in here trying to tie up units. This is not exactly what they want to be fighting, but this is also not really what the Eyes of the Desert want to be fighting either. There wasn't a ton of infantry for the weird spawn to really fight. It would have been much better suited perhaps fighting the Sternsmen if I could have got them on that target. But at this point I was mostly concerned with just keeping all of these units back. Because they're unbreakable, I mean, they're just going to stand and fight until the bitter end. You'll see there some purple rain going down on those archers. Hoping to make them crumble, to drive them offline, because they're a pretty scary unit to have. Fey Enchantress, you'll see this kind of this aura draining effect that happens whenever the Fey Enchantress is engaged in melee. It's called the Mists of the Lady, and it's lowering the melee attack of our enemies, as well as doing kind of minimal draining damage, but it's definitely not bad. And having the Demon Spew in here plus the Fey Enchantress, that's minus 10. That's minus 10 melee attack, which is huge. And a big, like, venomous spit here from the Eyes of the Desert. It's a pretty underrated ability that actually does a ton of damage. Huge shot. Maybe a tiny bit of friendly fire there, but I think we definitely killed more Sternsmen than we lost. And I'm going to use a Fate of Unit here on the Sternsmen to try and force them into crumbling. They're a very powerful unit, and you'll see here they are now crumbling, which means they are losing HP on their own. They're degenerating. The Claw of Nagash is still very healthy, and I think it's at this point I'm motioning to Triiari. I'm like, look, it's isolated. I think I pointed out to him that the Knights of the Lionhearted deal magic damage, and that if he was able to, it would be a good idea to get that onto the Claw of Nagash, surround it, and use that magic damage to really take it down, to bypass any kind of physical resistance it has. And yeah, so hopefully that's something that we can do. We're going to surround it with cavalry and beat it down. My Mirror Guard are going. My Demon Spew are beaten down pretty hard. There's still 51 models left. I'm going to throw them in here, trying to get them into combat. I still have my Sorcerer. Triiari's been holding his infantry in reserve, which is fine. Some of my routing units are coming back. The Swords of Chaos, only 8 models left. Horns of Montfort have kind of been forgotten down here for the moment. But with the Claw of Nagash isolated, that's a unit we definitely don't want on the battlefield into the late game, healing and forcing us to, you know, lose HP in this kind of pit fight. My Sorcerer is still in great shape, but my Exalted Hero is not. He's currently receiving an Earth Blood, courtesy of the Fey Enchantress, which is very nice. In these blob-type fights, the Fey Enchantress is a great ally to have. Mists of the Lady are very powerful. Demon Spew now also adding to that kind of AoE debuffing strategy that we have going. And the Chaos Sorcerer basically just here for leadership. Although I think the Paladins and the Green Knight have it covered. Looks like another Chalice of Potions. No, perhaps not. Oh wait, looks like it's coming down. It may end up killing more of our units. Oh no. Okay, that was Cetra. Yeah, he killed a ton of my units. He killed like almost all of my Demon Spew that I had left. That's alright. He tried to do something cool. And the Green Knight's in here with the Dolorous Blade, giving him huge weapon strength, melee attack, armor piercing damage. That's going to make him a pretty fierce opponent versus his Blood Knight. And with 2 Paladins, the Green Knight, plus the Fey Enchantress, the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord is really not long for this world. The Vampires are decent melee combatants, but not compared to the Paladins. They're designed to fight them when they're on these mounts. And the Blood Knight, he wants to run, but I'm also using my Chaos Sorcerer, who I think got the last hit there, and I'm using him to help tie down just all the mass we can get in there, as much mass as possible. The Holy Wardens are actually the even better unit to be taking down the Claw of Nagash. Because it has regen, fire damage does bonus damage. So the Claw of Nagash actually does have magic resistance, I'm seeing now, but it does have a weakness to fire. Fire damage is the key to taking it down. So in this kind of pit fight, we're doing just fine. I'm trying to support with what little units I have left my Exalted Hero with the few remaining Swords of Chaos, giving it a physical resistance buff. And they're going to be up against the Chosen of the Gods, who are shooting in melee. See them turning back into inanimate statues as they crumble. But they're such a powerful unit in melee. Cetra is in here with about 50% of his HP, but he's beginning to crumble now. And as he goes below 50% HP, his curse goes off and starts to drain all of our HP, and we're so low that this is absolutely brutal, and it hit almost all of us. But I think he started to go there because we were able to pick off the vampires. You'll see their corpses are kind of strewn here. They were never really able to get out of this pit fight and get back up into the air. Yeah, because he was ready to fight until the bitter end. The Prince we picked early. The Sphinx of Uksev did good work. He kind of bullied Kolek and took out my Summoners of Rage, who ended up getting decent value out of their Chain Lightning. But thanks to the Soul of Damnation, 200 kills, I was able to really focus down the King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion and the Blessed Legion of Fakht, and really keep them from being a factor in this game. The Chosen of the Gods, there's no way to keep them from being a factor. They're pretty much always effective. And at certain points, I just had to throw in my infantry just to tie down units long enough. Kolek getting 0 kills is probably the saddest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, don't judge me for that. Just about any unit in the game can get picked pretty hard by this kind of a goon, very mobile, very hard-hitting all-at-once goon squad. Kolek was already sitting pretty vulnerable at about 50% HP. His leadership is good, but it's not the best. And if you're able to, you know, hit him with a spell and then charge him all of a sudden, get a rear charge on him, he'll break and he'll run. And the sad thing about Kolek is he's so fast that he'll run just straight off the battlefield. So I had to make do with the units I had left. Really good play here from Triiari, making the most of his cavalry. He kind of let me take a lot of the brunt of the fighting, but that kind of ended up working to our advantage. I mean, my meat shield front line and very tanky units like Swords of Chaos, Weird Spawn, Summoners of Rage, they took so much damage that by the end of the fight, his hero core was very healthy thanks to some good healing, and his infantry were completely fresh. You'll see here, no kills on either of them. So had it come down to a really, you know, dangerous pit fight situation where it was much more even, having the Holy Wardens plus the Beast Slayers standing around the Fey Enchantress would have been a pretty unbreakable group to have. So thanks a lot to our opponents here, Gaming by Night, as well as Wookie Guy for the great play. We ended up playing more. I can't remember if you guys were in all of the games or if some of you ended up switching up, but we'll see in the next coming days as I cast those games. Hopefully try and keep my introductions a bit briefer. And thanks again to Triiari for playing these games with me. It's always nice to have a good buddy online who can help you live your dreams. So, and ROR battles are some of my favorite things to do. So guys, without any further ado, once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And yeah, hope you look forward to the ones to come. So take care, guys, and I will see you in the next one.